Hi, everybody, and welcome to this latest iteration of the Building to COP27 forum. It's been a while since we've hosted one of these sessions, but we're delighted to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Victoria Burrows. I'm the Director of Advancing Net Zero at the World Green Building Council. And I'll start today's session by kicking off with the agenda, what you can expect to hear from us today. We will start with some welcomes from our hosts from the World Green Building Council and the Global Alliance of Buildings and Construction. Then we will hear a Firestarter presentation. And for those of you expecting to see Nigel Topping, I wanted to let you know that we have a new Firestarter speaker. We have Sarah El Batouti, and we'll share some more about her in just a moment. And that's due to the mourning period in the UK that's currently being observed by the UK government. So thank you to Sarah for stepping in on Nigel's behalf. We look forward to your remarks. Then we will share with you what we know so far about the updates on buildings at COP27 and how we hope the sector will be represented. Then we'll hear on an update for the sector on the race to zero, and then hopefully some time for going through your questions. We usually get lots of questions on these sessions, so please don't be shy. We would love to hear from you as we go through the session, and we'll try to answer some of them live as we go along. We may not be able to get to all of them at the end, and if we can answer them as we go, then we will do. We would love to hear from you as always, so please do tell us about your events that you're hosting either at COP or alongside COP or in even your host country and linked to COP. We want to hear all about how you will be showcasing the built environment as part of the COP27 conference. And we also would like to know from you if we're at that stage of the COP process and the planning process where we're keen to know who will be in Sharm el-Sheikh and is available for speaking opportunities that we that we're looking at the moment, and whether or not in that, if you let us know if you're going to be in Sharm el-Sheikh, let us know whether or not you have accreditation for the Blue Zone. And there are also some possible hybrid opportunities. So if you're interested in being a speaker at COP, then please do reach out and we'll add you to our speaker tracker list. So welcome to this version, this latest iteration of the Building to COP27 forum. This is our opportunity to provide an engagement platform for both non-state actors, and that's the private sector, cities, states and regions, and state actors, being countries, to support the promotion of the built environment as a critical climate solution, both for mitigation and for adaptation. And we do this alongside the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, the Global ABC, and other key industry partners that make up the Building to COP27 coalition, which Christina will tell us about in a moment. So the forum is an incubator for the ambition loop. We are committed to demonstrating the ambition and action that's being taken on the ground to drive the ambitions of the sector towards decarbonisation and responding to resilience and adaptation in order to increase ambition and call for increased ambition from more companies, more cities and states and regions, and of course, national governments. So you can expect to hear about industry trends, to hear updates from us, from the Building to COP coalition and partners on our communications and updates, to hear about insights, but also share your own insights and help the development and rollout of the Building to COP27 campaign, Solutions on Human Settlements Day, and other campaign targets such as the Race to Zero. And finally, to unlock shared advocacy opportunities to collaborate towards our sector goals. I must just clarify that whilst we are supporting the COP presidency, the high-level climate champions team made up of incoming and outgoing COP hosts and climate champions for specific sectors and the other core partners in this ambition. Participation in these sessions alone does not guarantee access to the COP27 Blue Zone or speaker or topic inclusion in events. The accreditation process is managed entirely by the UNFCCC, and the selection process for expressions of interest are processed by the high-level climate champions team or the COP unit or UNFCCC. But we are doing our best to ensure the built environment is represented by making the most of those opportunities, which you will hear about in a moment. But for now, I'd like to start with the welcomes and invite Christina to say a quick hello. Over to you, Christina.
Thank you, Victoria. Hello, everyone. It's so good to be here again with you. For those of you that maybe are new to these forums and our work, I'm here to say an overview of what we do. So we've started last year alongside our partners, Global ABC, in the lead up to Cities, Regions, and Built Environment Day at COP26 with these sessions. And of course, following up on the great collaboration and success in the last COP26 and that day at November 11th, we are now building to COP27. So the Building to COP27 Coalition is a group of organizations working together to accelerate climate action in the built environment. We are not only committed to positioning the built environment as a priority climate solution, but also as a massive opportunity to deliver system transformation to improve livelihoods worldwide. It is time to unleash the capacity of the built environment of delivering social value and ensuring the resilient solutions needed in our disrupted world. It's time to realize the ongoing suffering due to the impacts of climate change happening right now, and that infrastructure that is existing or will be built possibly is not fit for purpose or people-centric. So showing up today, I know that you share with us our determination to see real, transformative, sustainable change in the built environment. And at COP27 in Africa, we have an opportunity to continue to elevate these messages, because it is local and regional leadership that are vital policy enablers for climate action on buildings and construction, waste, consumption, unlocking the circular economy, and of course, creating good, quality, green jobs. Egypt will take a strong focus on resilience and adaptation when it hosts COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh this November. So we need to listen and learn from those voices of communities most impacted by climate impacts. So in this forum, we're here also expressing our support to Africa so they can leapfrog the barriers to scaling up sustainable built environments and create a legacy that benefits both people and planet. COP27, I truly believe, is an opportunity to show the world that everyone, everywhere, has a right to a resilient and prosperous future. It is not just about net zero, it's much more than that. It's also about embracing and scaling low carbon, highly resilient and equitable built environments. It is about working together to get there. It's about deep collaboration. So wherever you stand in the value chain, you have a role to play. So a big thank you from me. Thank you for being here. I look forward to working with you to continue to build this momentum in this last 2 months before COP27 and beyond. And with that, it is my pleasure to hand over to Nora from Global ABC.
Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you to the entire World Green Building Council team. It's always a pleasure to do this together with you. And of course, also the Building to COP coalition that you already mentioned. And we're so pleased to be part of that. And of course, it's fantastic to see so many of you and to see your interest and your enthusiasm. We are here, as Christina also pointed out, we are here to collaborate with you and to live the deep collaboration that we need to see in the buildings and construction sector. We had a really fantastic COP26 where we saw a new level of attention to the buildings and construction sector that is so much needed for the transformation. And we're really looking forward to COP27. It will be a different COP. Of course, each COP is different. And this COP, as Christina has pointed out, is taking place in Africa, in a continent where most of the future floor area growth of the future construction in the next decades will take place. So this is very timely. We also know that for this COP, there are several topics that are at the forefront for this region, one of which is resilience. Of course, another one is finance, and we are committed to addressing those as well. I don't want to say much more. I'll delve a little bit deeper together with Victoria into specifically what we do already know about COP27, I just want to take this opportunity to welcome you as well on behalf of the Global ABC, on behalf of the Building to COP Coalition, of course. I really look forward to hearing your questions and your input, and hopefully to seeing many of you at COP27. And with that, I'll hand over back to Victoria. Sorry, I should have said one more thing and made explicit reference to the slide here. And I think probably many of you know this already from last year, from COP26, but also because you may have worked with us on this, which is the Human Settlements Pathway Goals, which have been released in 2020. And of course, they're a little bit longer than what you see here, but the gist of it is that we are looking at quite a challenge and an opportunity, which is to halve emissions by 2030 from buildings, whereas 100% of new buildings must be net zero in operation, and to work towards full decarbonization along the life cycle of the buildings and construction sector by 2050. And this is, of course, also the vision for the Global ABC and what we aspire to. Now I'm handing back over to Victoria.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Nora. So with that, I'm delighted to introduce our Firestarter speaker, Sarah El-Batouty. Again, thank you, Sarah, for stepping in to provide these remarks. Sarah is a global ambassador for the UNFCCC High-Level Climate Champions, which means working to accelerate the implementation of zero carbon targets and building resilience and adaptation. Sarah is a global award-winning architect with 18 years experience in the field of green and environmental buildings and sustainable development, and so an excellent champion for our sector within the High-Level Climate Champions team. So welcome, Sarah, and over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and there's a lot to cover, so I get straight to it. I'm very happy to take part in this talk today. So let me just introduce the what happened, how all of this started from COP26. And Glasgow created an unprecedented convergence between investors, businesses, cities, and subnationals. And the whole reason for this is to increase the dialogue and to increase the amount of people that are actually involved in the decision-making process, or those that will be involved in taking actions. So the climate champions, their mandate is quite unique. It's to mobilize stronger and more ambitious climate action from non-state actors. These are businesses, small, medium, large, cities, NGOs, universities, and also individuals, and anything that isn't government. So the role is quite broad, and it's to allow these people to come into the conversation and to work within three main priorities that leverage the non-state actors. The first one is taking a holistic approach, and it means putting resilience and adaptation at the top of the agenda. They need to be at the top of the agenda for several various reasons. This will be done by strengthening the Race to Resilience campaign to mobilize more action, developing resilience breakthroughs for action to 2030, and also to drive systems transformations and holding dialogues with non-state actors that will address actions that need to be taken on loss and damage. So it's the mandate is unique because in the design of the solution and in the design of the action, you do have to really be speaking about people who do put the action on the ground a lot more. And then, moving from summits and discussions and talks and papers to actual solutions, focusing on implementation and how to accelerate the action. And this means turning pledges into actions so that all commitments and pledges made through the Race to Zero or Race to Resilience and the GFANs translate into actual projects and action plans that deliver by 2030. And thirdly, it's showcasing financial asset flows and scaling up finance. And this is where it gets really complicated because we're doing several jobs. So you are listing the needs and the potentials for partnerships and action. Then you're developing projects, and then you're actually talking about how to finance these projects and when they are eventually financed to get them out there to as many people as possible. So this means we will be working with the GFANs to ensure commitments made by the private sector and urgent, financial flows needed. And the financial needs need to be mobilized through the EMDs, through the champions elevating regional and thematic financial initiatives. We are also collaborating with this current COP27 and 5 UN Economic Mission to host a series of regional finance roundtables focused on bridging the gap between investors and solutions, and really turning them, projectizing for climate action. 3 roundtables have already taken place in Addis Ababa, in Bangkok, and Santiago, and the 4th one is currently being held in Beirut. And then there is a final one on the 20th of September in Geneva. So these 3 priorities will be achieved by using the Climate Champions unique platforms, and they're laid out for the next 5 years, which were launched in COP26. And we are focusing on the following, and this is really relevant for the nature of COP27 being in the global south as well. So the first one is regionalizing and localizing our efforts, driving climate action and, especially financing for those efforts in developing markets and emerging ones, in particular representing and reflecting the needs of the whole of Africa. And once you start talking into the discussion of localization, I'll just talk a bit about that later on, because this is really quite relevant for COP27. And then you have the radical collaboration and the ambitious loop, and the climate champions through the Marrakesh partnership and with the leaders across the globe foster radical collaboration within and across the sectors and between public and private sector, focusing on the near-term solutions. And I think it would be, we need to frame what are the COP27 priorities and the role of buildings in achieving net zero. And should I discuss that now, or does that come later on in the conversation, Victoria?
No, that's okay. I think Bex is going to share some of the updates.
Yeah, I think, Sarah, you can continue for now.
Okay, so our buildings and why our buildings really crucial for part of the COP27 agenda. As we discussed, localization and the realization of projects on the ground is particularly very important, and we need to kind of zoom in on the sector as well. So just to put things into context, the building and construction sector is responsible for about 40% of the global energy related carbon emissions and 50% of all extracted materials. 2/3 of people will live in cities by 2060, and only half of the buildings required in the urban fabric will accommodate them. The world's building stock will be doubled. And if tackled early, solutions can be developed at no additional cost. Actors in the built environment, from investors to engineers, have already started working on solutions. We've got a particular solution here when we are basing the discussion. We opened up the discussion several years ago as to why green buildings are not increasing at the required rate. Why do partnerships not happen? And so we looked at the gaps in the market. We looked at the opportunities, and we have the first carbon neutral village, and it's called the Bahareya village, and it's an eco-friendly compound for farm workers in the Western desert of Egypt. And putting together technology with cultural relevance and the need, and also looking at which sector requires this the most, helps you to develop projects that are locally relevant, but also allows you to start exploring the potentials of the market here. And there's a particular relevance for this because the COP is in Africa, with the increased population, with the rapid unplanned urbanization happening everywhere. There is a mounting demand for building. There is a mounting demand for building that addresses climate resilience. And the pace and scale of this requires, the construction sector really realize that they have a potential significance to do something about the carbon emissions. And there's an urgent need to meet the rapid delivery of resilient homes. In particular, we're looking at the residential sector and buildings to avoid locking emissions and inefficient construction. The embedded low carbon principles into each project decision from concept, is critical, because the role of the designer, the role of the architect is now becoming more prominent in solving these questions. It's not just the space, but it's the space reciprocating to needs. And there's an urgent need to meet these needs, from the brief development onwards. So green buildings are, particularly something that have to be responsive. It's a huge market of about almost, 25 trillion investment opportunity, and it's creating higher value and lower risk in the assets. I think it's really important to realize that, and especially COVID made this very interesting, that we spend 90% of our times in buildings, and buildings have to start becoming a product in their own right, and how this product fulfills the needs of people. So they're not autonomous to the climate, and they're not autonomous to needs or livelihoods. And this is something that we drive through the messaging of our work and through the Climate Champions team. We really need to consider, what buildings need here. Cooling is particularly very important in Africa. Energy prices and energy costs and how saving on water and energy and habitat and material are becoming more and more essential to the discussion, because at the end of the day, buildings are all about the people that occupy them, and such a huge part of our lives is now responding to the demands for resilience and also adapting to the climate change issue. So this kind of work, it translates itself into the importance of both mitigation and adaptation, and creating holistic solutions, holistic climate action in the built environment. And here I just want to focus very briefly on initiatives that are happening. We need to just frame it again that the number of weather-related natural disasters has tripled in the last decade. We can see, every week on the news there is something in particular now with the flood situation in Pakistan and the loss of lives and the damage. So by 2030, scientists predict that there's an increasing, the magnitude and the frequency of the floods and hurricanes and droughts and extreme temperature and wildfires will unfortunately, there will be a tripling of this. And millions of people globally are experiencing the economic, social, and cultural impacts of climate change, and we are experiencing it continuously, to damage of buildings, the lack of performance and efficiency, infrastructure, not being able to respond in a way or forecast the future problems that we will have, and hence the sector really does need to become part and parcel with these significant issues, and looking at also loss of resources and water and food and the basic human needs. So one way adaptation and resilience are being championed this year is led, in the lead up to COP27, is to look at rural resilience, and to look at how we can move forward with affordable, accessible, climate resilient housing. So there's a fantastic initiative. It's called Roof Over Our Heads, and it's a campaign, and it's led by Sheila Patel, ex-chair of Swamda Dwellers International and also a global ambassador. And the campaign envisions delivering resilient, low carbon and affordable homes and improving public infrastructure to urban residents, particularly those working in the informal sector. So their vision itself is very much a manifestation, and very much something like a go-to for the Race to Resilience and Race to Zero campaigns. Excuse me, and will contribute, towards the 2030 resilience breakthrough that will set out the need of 1 billion people to have better design, better construction, and access to financing to live decently. Another initiative that is happening that is, taking momentum in Egypt is a Decent Life initiative. And this one is for the upgrading of 4,500 villages that are home to 58 million Egyptians, predominantly working within the agricultural sector. So it's raising the capacity of their homes. Egypt, in partnership with eConsult and myself, we're taking on board, this idea of race to resilience and adapting it to create the first green guidelines for rural communities and how to build that is specifically tailored and authored for non-practitioners, because we know that people in these communities do not hire architects and do not hire engineers and specialists. They build on their own. And so this is a guideline for them to help them build their communities with climate resilience and, really take actions and also empower these communities to have affordable, quite easy to implement actions on the ground in the hope to upscale this and outscale this to Africa and beyond. In terms of the non-state actor engagement, it's very relevant that non-state actors understand that they are in a position of very good ability to be able to do, work, because non-state actors are faster and they take decisions a lot faster than national governments and much larger institutions. So this is an opening for us to explore in the building and construction sector, how non-state actor engagement is critical as the voices of cities and businesses and financial institutions, and how critical they are in the ambition loop for policy and implementation. Non-state actors can move quite quickly, and they can demonstrate through their projects that things can be done in a way and present their projects within the markets. And also, it's really important to think about forecasting for the future, planning your villages, your cities, your projects for the future. So with that in mind, really partnering with some big names and influential businesses in the built environment, we're very happy to have, joining the Race to Zero this year, Vicinity Centres, Australian, Fraser Property Industrials, Oigus Construction, it's a French construction service company, Savills, it's a UK-based real estate company, Malaysian Resources, Corporate Bernard, it's a Malaysian construction company. And from the MENA region, we are looking to expand this even more. And we're also looking to signal this momentum that's growing with the SMEs, with companies such as Coleman and Company, Golden Hands and Co., Symmetrix Solution and Arise India, and also eConsult Egypt. So we're looking to have all of these projects be kind of available so that there are no barriers to this construction sector taking action. The momentum is playing out, quite quickly, and there are rapidly changing standards and policies that the sector has been calling for. So some recent signals of change for this critical decade are including, the Washington DC Building Energy Performance Standard, the first African, South Africa is the first African country to make energy performance certificates mandatory in the private sector and non-residential buildings. In Denmark, Copenhagen will ensure that the city is supplied by 100% carbon neutral electricity in heat in 2025, and making all the buildings net zero carbon in cooperation with C40. So I think the takeaways from setting out the scene is that we need to keep the dialogue going. We need to see more projects. Everyone joining this Building to COP forum has the opportunity to acknowledge their own role and influence in transforming the sector. We also encourage you to take action, share your stories of near-term action and solutions, and join the Race to Zero and Race to Resilience campaign. And we look forward to seeing this demonstrated and really highlighting these stories of action from our sector at COP27, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for sharing those insights. And I know there's been lots of interest in what you've been saying, especially about that eco-village. Fantastic. And I think someone's helpfully posted the link for it. So thank you very much for that. Please continue to ask your questions. And I think we're doing the team are doing a great job in answering as many live as we can, or sort of in the chat box as we can. So keep an eye on that Q&A box, and we'll keep moving through the updates. So thank you so much, Sarah. See you in Sharm el-Sheikh. So first of all, I'd just like to start with an update to the presidency agenda, which came out last month. Just a very quick video to share with you before we move on. So here's what the agenda looks like, the COP27 presidency agenda that's been published in the past few weeks. You can see that on the 7th and 8th of November, there'll be a World Leaders Summit. Then the rest of the days that have a theme very similarly to last year's COP26. On the 9th of November is finance. On the 10th of November, science and youth. On the 11th of November, decarbonisation. On the 12th, adaptation and agriculture. We have a rest day on the 13th. Then the 14th, the following week, is water and gender. The 15th is energy and I've completely forgotten the name of that acronym. If someone can help me out in the chat, that would be great. It's completely gone from my mind. The 16th of November is biodiversity. And then on the 17th, we have solutions, which we will be hearing very soon about in a bit more detail. But also with the Marrakesh Partnerships Global Climate Action will also be featuring human settlements as part of that day on the 17th of November as well. And I wanted to spend a bit of time sharing with you what we know about what will be happening about the built environment across the 2 weeks at COP. And again, just to reiterate that request from earlier, that if you know of events that you're involved in, or if you hear about events related to the built environment, please do share. Last year, we hosted a calendar of built environment events at COP26 on buildingtocop.org. And so we're planning to do exactly the same again this year, so that those who are not able to attend in person at COP27 can see the content that they can access virtually, and that we can keep you on top of what content is happening on the built environment across the 2 weeks. So starting on the 17th itself, so Solutions and Human Settlements Day, there will be some content within the presidency spaces that I actually won't go into too much detail on, because we do have another speaker that will cover that in a moment. So that's related to Ministerial and urban housing, and an initiative on sustainable urban resilience for the next generation from the COP presidency. Then within the blue zone, again, within the action zone, the Marrakesh Partners Global Climate Action Zone, last year there was a 3-hour event on the built environment. Some of you may have been involved in. This year there'll be a 2-hour event plus some breakthrough labs on the human settlements. And we have submitted some expressions of interest for those breakthrough labs as the Building to COP coalition. And we know that there are other expressions of interest that have been submitted as well. So again, let us know if you've submitted an expression of interest, and if you're aware of any events that get confirmed related to human settlements. There was also a call for expressions of interest for UNFCCC side events to happen within the blue zone, and I know many organizations made submissions, and we've just recently had the confirmation of those that have been confirmed, and the schedule was also published last week. So we know that there will be a session on future-proofing the built environment, unlocking finance for inclusive and resilient housing. That will be hosted by the Building to COP Coalition and Habitat for Humanity, and that will happen on the 10th of November. And then 2 further side events related to the built environment, firstly from the Global Alliance of Buildings and Construction and EPD Egypt on pathways to sustainable buildings markets through credible, comparable life cycle-based information. And then also from Architecture 2030 and ASHRAE, and the International Network of Women Engineers in Science, Planning, Design and Development in the Global South, the How-To for People and Planet. And both those events are currently scheduled for the 16th of November. So keep an eye on the side event schedule. We don't have confirmation officially as to whether those would be broadcast or streamed, but we will update you as soon as we know. And then there is also some confirmations pending from expressions of interest submitted from the Building to COP Coalition and from World GBC related to events for the Action Hub event. For the Global Climate Action Hub. And again, we're waiting to hear confirmation on those. And if you do know any other Action Zone events that are happening related to the built environment, then please let us know and we'll add them to this list. And then across the 2 weeks within the Blue Zone again, there are pavilions that are hosted by various organizations that provide an opportunity to share more content through the sessions that are hosted in these pavilions. There's the Buildings Pavilion from the Global Alliance of Buildings and Construction, and Nora will share more about that in a moment. There's the Business Pavilion from the We Mean Business Coalition, the Resilience Hub focused specifically on resilience and adaptation, and we're hoping to showcase the built environment there. And then other pavilions that we're aware of that we've made applications for or that are in conversations with the Africa Union, civil society, and just many, many more. So again, if you are invited or you've made a submission to your local government's pavilion, then please do let us know and we'll add it to our calendar and schedule. Then there's also the Green Zone, which is outside of the Blue Zone UN space and open to the public. And there was an expression of interest for hosting space and content events within the Green Zone, which closed at the end of August. So we look forward to seeing what activities will be happening within the Green Zone. And if you are in Egypt or in Sharm el-Sheikh, I encourage you to visit there. And then in addition to what's happening within the Blue Zone and the Green Zone, there are external fringe events happening outside of COP, but very close to the venue. We have, for example, and this is not an exclusive list, but there's the Sustainable Innovation Forum that's hosted by Climate Action that we know will have sessions on the built environment, the World Climate Summit from the World Climate Foundation, with a focus on investment. It's lots of sessions around investment and sustainable finance. If you want to be a speaker at any of these events, or if you're interested or will be within Sharm el-Sheikh, then again, please do let us know. We again want to represent or put forward speakers from the business community, from cities, from states and regions, as is within as Sarah had shared about the high-level champions for the non-state actors, but also, of course, government representatives welcome to share their progress. And then also, alongside all of these events that we're aware of happening, the communications campaign, the Building to COP27 communications campaign, the website and the virtual content. So there's always a way to get involved. And please do continue to share your stories, your messages of support for the sector, and we will carry them with us into these events that are happening at COP. And we will be sharing the recording. I saw a question about that for you to kind of take yourself through this overview again. And as I mentioned, we will be adding to this list over time as we know more information. I won't spend much time going through this, but there is on the COP27 website, there has now been published a map of the Blue Zone, so you can take a look and get yourself familiar with where all the various events will be held. And also some images of what the Green Zone will look like, which is where the public access is, where those events and exhibition spaces will be held. So with that very quick overview, I'd like to pass over to Nora to share with you some information from the Global ABC, starting with Buildings Breakthrough. Please, Nora.
Thanks, Victoria, for giving us such a comprehensive overview. And also thank you all for your questions in the Q&A. We're trying to answer them live. A couple of words on those because several people have asked similar things. So there are at least one, I think there are probably several master forums going around collecting who is going to COP and who is doing what on buildings and construction at COP in the Blue Zone or in the Green Zone or outside of that. So maybe what we'll do is we'll send those forms around again in case any of you haven't received it. And we really invite you to put in there what you're planning. It doesn't have to be through us or with us. It just helps us to communicate to everyone in buildings and construction what's going on with buildings and construction at COP, to help us promote your event. It's not per se our primary task, but it's just something that we like to do if we can. And also it might help us to facilitate a bit speaker availability, because, you know, it can happen at COP that, you know, you have events and you're looking for additional speakers, maybe on a certain topic and so on. And if we have that list, then we can help with that. So we'll send around those forms, and we encourage you to fill them out for coordination. Okay, so in addition to the many things that we already know is going on at COP that Victoria has named, I want to talk to you about two things. And the first is the buildings breakthrough. So some of you may know that we had several breakthroughs launched at COP26, and I'll say a little bit more about that background in a second. Basically, buildings was not part of that. And this is something that we would like to see changed, and we're very happy that two countries have stepped up. That's the Ministry of Ecological Transition of France and the Ministry for National Territory Planning, Land Planning, Housing and City Policy of the Kingdom of Morocco, to co-lead a buildings breakthrough under the coordination or the umbrella, if you will, of the Global ABC, and of course also in collaboration with the Building to COP Coalition. And the aim here is to rally countries around a common target, of course, towards building decarbonization and common metrics, and also to focus not just on mitigation. I think all of the previous breakthroughs focused on mitigation, but also on resilience, really noting the importance of that for so many countries, and also just the special importance of that at COP27. We've had first consultations with countries yesterday. So it was a country-only consultation that was quite positive. And we are planning to do an event at COP, possibly a launch. It's to be determined. This is really the decision of the co-leading countries at the moment. We are inviting existing initiatives to express their support. We haven't sent around anything formal, but we are already inviting you to consider supporting it, or to contact us if you're keen about knowing more. It's really initiatives though, like it's not established organizations. We're looking for initiatives. For example, the World Green Building Council Net Zero commitment, that would be one possible initiative, to look at this and to see if they would like to express their support. Next slide, please, Victoria. Thank you. Just a little bit of context. I won't read all of this, but as I said, so we have the breakthrough agenda. We had the breakthroughs launched at COP26, and at COP26, we saw, by we, and now I mean the world, I guess, 45 countries coming together to agree to make clean technologies the most affordable and attractive option by 2030. So what unites, I guess, these breakthroughs that are already existing is they all have a timeline towards 2030. So not 2050 on purpose, but 2030, closer, because the action is urgent. And it's endpoint oriented. So it's really about this. We need to make the clean tech or the cleaner option the new normal by 2030. It needs to be not a niche, like in some cases it is now. It needs to be normal, while the quote unquote older or dirtier technologies need to be the niche. So we need to reverse things in many cases. And it's really about accelerating this and about strengthening international collaboration. Next slide, please, Victoria. Thank you. So these are the existing breakthroughs that have been launched at COP26. So power, road transport, steel, hydrogen, and agriculture. So as you can see, I think actually agriculture came later, but those are the ones that are out. So as you can see here, they are all united with this 2030 timeline, and they all have the new normal, or the preferred choice, or the dominant market form. Like, this is the common formulation that they're using. You can read it here on this slide. And I think Victoria will probably also share those slides, right? So in case you don't have the chance to read it all, you can see it later. Next slide, please. Okay, so that was on the breakthroughs. So it's a country driven initiative, and it is for countries, for national governments. But we are welcoming, as I said, support from initiatives. So also for you, if you are involved in an initiative related to buildings, of course, or you know of an initiative that you think might be interested in expressing support, you can contact us. Now to the next topic, the Buildings Pavilion. So some of you may recall that at COP26, we had a shared pavilion with the Women Business Coalition, where they had a business pavilion, we had a buildings pavilion. Essentially, we shared 2 spaces for both of those. And this year, we again aim to have this type of partnership with the Women Business Coalition, but in a slightly different format. So we have both put in our applications for pavilions. Both have been accepted, and we're very happy about that because our understanding is that the number of applications exceeded the available space by 2. So this is very good for us that we have both had it accepted. Basically, we are looking at 2 separate pavilions, 1 dedicated space for buildings, 1 dedicated space for business, that nevertheless are close together geographically and design-wise that you can recognize them as being linked. And the Buildings Pavilion is really supposed to be the platform for all stakeholders, where you come if you want to know what's going on with buildings at COP. You can go to the pavilion. It's a meeting place for the entire community, and it's a place to showcase solutions. Next slide, please. This is a snapshot back at our Buildings Pavilion at COP26. For those of you who maybe weren't there or who would like a little reminder, for us, it was really, really nice to see that we had the space for the community to come together. We had over 30 events. We were very fortunate to welcome high-level speakers, including ministers, including CEOs, including city leaders, to really join hands and say, this is important, we want to work together. And we thought it was really, really a good idea to have the whole setup in the pavilion being hybrid. And I saw that there were some questions around hybrid setup also in the Q&A now. This was quite successful, and we feel this is also needed to be inclusive because not everybody can, for various reasons, make it to COP in person. So this is something we do aim for. Again, we do aim for a hybrid setup this year, but it very much depends on what's technologically feasible on the ground. So I cannot yet promise that, but we recognize it's important. Next slide. Okay, and this is just a snapshot of what the Buildings Pavilion would look like. The pictures are from last year, but it hopefully gives you an idea. Essentially, we are aiming for 1 auditorium, 2 meeting rooms, a social and exhibition space, as well as a recording studio that we will share with the Women Business Coalition. So this means for you, we will open programming for the Buildings Pavilion very soon. And apart from our sponsors, the pavilion is being sponsored by private sector members. Apart from our sponsors, we will be prioritizing global ABC members as well as members of the Building to COP Coalition network. So those 2 groups. Okay. And so for you, that means you could submit for an event in the auditorium. That's a larger event. Or if you'd like to have a, let's say, bilateral meeting, this is a possibility. If you have an exhibition on buildings and construction solution, we are trying to make space for that. Or if you are looking for a space to hold an interview, so that would be possible in the studio. A lot of this, as I said, is subject to what is technologically available on site, but what I'm presenting to you here is certainly what we're aiming for. Next slide. I think that's the end, probably.
Yes.
Okay, so back over to you, Victoria. I'll post some information in the chat, so stay tuned. Thanks.
Please do. Thank you very much, Nora. I'm looking forward to having bags of content through the Buildings Pavilion at COP again this year. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to hopefully bring in Leah. I think I saw you joining us, Leah, so I hope everything's okay. Do we have Leah? Hello.
Hi, yes, I'm here.
Excellent, wonderful. So please take it away.
Thanks so much, Victoria, and apologies for being late with another meeting just beforehand, and I hope you can hear me okay. So Nora was beforehand speaking a little bit about initiatives and linking that to buildings. So here I am speaking about, in particular, one initiative that's one COP27 presidential initiative that's being developed in collaboration with a UN Habitat and facilitated by ICLEI. And if you go to the next slide, please. And it has also been developed with the much appreciated support from many of the people on the call here today. And I also see who are participating in this call. Next slide, please. So just to give you a little bit of a background, this is an initiative, COP27 presidential initiative, right now with the working title Surge, Sustainable Urban Resilience for the Next Generation. That title might still change, but this is what we're currently working with. As a background, there was a stakeholder meeting at the World Urban Forum in June, and then a big workshop in July with over 120 participants in the room and virtual, giving ideas of what an initiative on sustainable cities should contain. And based on that, we developed a first draft that went through massive stakeholder consultation. And based on that, we now had a second draft that was just presented last Friday by the UN Habitat Executive Director to the member states, also with the participation of several of the people who are on this call here today. And I'll, on the next slide, walk you through a little bit of this initiative. With the idea that there is, this is still a draft. It is quite a lot of information to take in. The concept note, it will be available for public, for everybody to look at very soon. So you'll be able to read more about this shortly. So maybe to say how this was built on is we've looked at, there are some key barriers that limit urban emission reductions, urban adaptation, and building urban systems resilience. You can see them here on the left. And then how is this initiative aiming to fill these gaps, and what are the objectives on the right? Won't go into much detail, but to say that one big gap is for sure multi-level governance, that current NDCs are not enough to respond to the climate emergency, and that's why there's a need to strengthen the implementation of the climate agenda in and with cities. There's not enough finance, money is always the big question, and there's not enough local capacity, not enough access to technology and innovation, and then also the issues that urban vulnerable groups are often disproportionately and adversely affected by climate change, while they are the ones contributing the least. So if we go to the next slide, you can see that there's been 10 guiding principles that have been, so to say, developed as an umbrella for this initiative, with the idea of building the sustainable, inclusive, and resilient urban systems. And I mean, you can read them here on the slide, but pretty much it boils down to being low carbon resilient, nature positive, circular, finance enabling, and so on, as really entry points to guiding this work. If you go to the next slide, you can see that based on the concept and the stakeholder consultation, and based on all the input received, there's been 5 working groups developed: buildings and housing, urban energy, urban waste and consumption, urban mobility, and urban water. And I guess for many people here on the call, the buildings and housing group is of most interest, and also to say that many of you of the organizations that are currently on this call have already signed up to support this initiative in the Global ABC and UNEP, the World Green Building Council. All of them have already been part of this effort. And as part of these working groups, there are several cross-cutting issues, namely the multi-level governance issue, the climate change action planning, urban and territorial planning, climate finance, data, and capacity issues that are being, so to say, the aim is of implementing them throughout these working groups. And on the next slide, you'll see a draft governance structure of this initiative. So it's open for broad public participation. So it's open for national governments to participate, city networks, international organizations from civil society, academia, and so on. Will form this alliance and, so to say, be the supporters of this initiative. Then there's a steering committee consisting of working group leads and the global secretariat, with the idea of having a small and lean secretariat going into this, and then the working groups. And here on the right-hand side, you can see some of the core partners who've already supported this. Because I know we're running out of time, let me go to the next steps. So we are hoping to, on the next slide, please, we're hoping to work on some of the implementing mechanisms together with partners. On the 17th, as Victoria mentioned and Nora also alluded to, is Solutions Day. And on this Solutions Day, there is a big focus on urban solutions as well as buildings. And on this day will also, there is a Housing and Urban Development Ministerial meeting on cities and climate change will take place. And I'll speak a little bit about that afterwards. And then the real work only starts after COP, with really working with the working groups and then hopefully reporting on progress by next COP. Let me finish with the last slide, please. On the urban ministerial meeting. So the idea is to have this with all housing and urban development ministers present in Sharm el-Sheikh, possibility of having ministers participating online, the COP27 presidency, as well as selected city networks and other partners and other core partners who are part of this, with discussing the topic of multi-level climate action, the Surge Initiative, and then hopefully having an outcome statement that will really bring the message home that you need local commitments and local action in order to achieve the Paris Agreement as well. So to say that there is no Built Environment Day this day, but buildings and cities will feature very, very prominently on the 17th of November. And I'll close here and happy if there's any questions, happy to answer them.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Leah. Yeah, we're really tight on time, but if anyone does have any questions for Leah, then please send them through. Please do get involved, as she's put out the call to action for, and get in touch with any of us if you'd like to know more information. I've been seeing questions about the recordings, and yes, we will be sending the recording out, and hopefully all of the slides. We just need to tidy some up a bit. I think there's just to make sure that they're all super clear, and we'll send the slides to you if we can. Okay, so I'm just going to we're running really behind, and we're nearly at the top of the agenda, and I think we don't have time for Bex to cover her updates on Race to Zero, unfortunately, but that's another reason for sharing out the slides, and maybe we can do a separate recording, Bex. Apologies for that. But again, thank you to everyone for submitting questions, and to the team who have been answering them live as we've been going through, in the chat boxes we've been going through. Please do continue to reach out to us if you have any information about events happening on the built environment, either at COP or around COP or in your country related to COP. We'd love to hear from you. Please, again, let us know if you will be at COP, to add us to it, and if you'd like to have someone from your organization or from your city, state, region, or national government to put forward as a speaker to represent the building and construction sector at COP and the various events. And please do, when letting us know, confirm if they have UN accreditation to attend the Blue Zone events. And I may just skip all the way through to our call to action right at the end. Sorry, Bex, so fantastic slides, but we'll share them out at some point. Our call to action is for green building councils to engage with your members, to communicate the opportunities for joining the Race to Zero and all the COP activities that are happening in the lead up to, during, and beyond COP27, of course, in the lead up to COP28. For the private sector, we ask you to join the Race to Zero and get involved with the Race to Resilience and all of the communications campaigns in the lead up to COP. Share your stories of ambition and especially implementation and action so that we can equally share them on the COP platforms. If you are a city or representing a state or regional government, then please join the Race to Zero. And again, please share your stories of action and ambition. And of course, we're calling on national governments to incorporate ambitious, concrete climate measures in your nationally determined contributions and join the buildings breakthrough that Nora has just outlined for everyone. So I'm afraid we need to wrap it up there, but thank you again for your engagement. Thank you for sharing your questions. Thank you to the team for answering them. Please continue to engage with us through email if you have any further questions, and look out for communications about the next Building to COP forum. And you can find out more information on updates related to the built environment at COP. And events happening in the lead up to COP at buildingtocop.org. So thank you again for your time today. Apologies for running over, but we hope to see some of you in Sharm el-Sheikh, where we are committed to representing the building and construction sector as a solution to both the mitigation and adaptation agendas. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you. Thanks, Leah.